And a good Saturday evening to you all. Hopefully, the week has ended up well for everybody out there. We are back. It is time for the Saturday edition of BS and a Beer. Yesterday, I was lucky and surprised with a 14-year-old current beer, but now we have another 2011, and it comes in, and this is an anniversary beer, so it was very easy to date. This is from Firestone Walker in Paso, Robles, California. This is their the 15th anniversary ale, and it is basically a blend of several of their previous anniversary beers, all barrel-aged, all into one. It is 12.5%. This was released in 2011. This is going to be a good one. Style-wise, it's such a mix of everything. They basically classified it as a catch-all one, the American Strong Ale. And it smells strong, that's for sure. Lots and lots of caramely notes. And I cannot remember what the previous years were that they all mixed together. I probably won't even drink all that because it's 12.5%. But I think there was a couple of barley wines, maybe a porter, probably an IPA, but I don't know. All I know is it's hopefully going to be good, so we're going to flip and we're going to talk some more interesting randomness. We're back. And I didn't even get to announce it. The comically oversized Snifter has returned, which makes it just a glorious Saturday indeed. It's cold in Rochester. It's cold. Beer will help. But yeah, it smells like, just a mishmash, whatever you want to call it, of different barrel-aged beers. Can't really get anything about the barrel. I just get a lot of caramel malt, which probably means there was a lot. Let's see if it says anything. Does it say anything? It says nothing. Okay, well, that was handy. I'm glad we checked. By the way, the aroma will open up a little more as it warms up, but for now, let's have a taste and see how this goes. 12.5%, 14 years old. Let's go. Yeah. That's really nice. That's really smooth. Oh, that's dangerous. Yeah, that would be an interesting time if you were not aware of just how heavy alcohol this was. Wow, that went down like water. But it's smooth, sweet, little bit of malt, little bit of caramel. Not much in the way of bitterness. Oh my. Yep, you're going to be a problem. Yes, you are. I mean, speaking of problems, as you can tell from the thumbnail, and I called it technically these would be classified as edible floods. These are some of the interesting non-water floods that have plagued humanity. There are a bunch of other ones with like chemical runoff and runoff from mills and mines and all that, but these 5 in particular I chose because technically they were an edible wave. So let's just get right into it. Edible or drinkable, however you wish to define it, but consumable, I should say. We start off the oldest one. We're going to go oldest to youngest, and weirdly, the most recent one wasn't that long ago. I was alive when the most recent one happened. But for the first one, we're going back to 1814. This is the London Beer Flood. That's right, a beer flood. There was an accident at Moe and Company's Horseshoe Brewery in London on the 17th of October, the year 1814. Basically, what happened is this. They don't know 100% what happened, but they just know that a 22-foot tall wooden vat that was filled to the brim with porter that was fermenting burst. How big was this? You're looking, they said, between 580,000 and 1.47 million liters, or in gallons, that's 154,000, anywhere upwards to 388,000 gallons of beer that all of a sudden was not in its container anymore. Let's see, the escaping liquid from the first one discharged the valve of another vessel and destroyed several other barrels. So all that was the outcome of everything that happened. It was a domino effect, one leading to another, leading to almost 400,000 gallons of porter being released into the environment. So basically what happened next, it destroyed the back wall of the brewery and swept into an area known as the St. Giles Rookery. Unfortunately, 8 people lost their lives in the beer flood. 5 of them, and this is very, very, very sad, 5 of them were mourners at the wake of a young boy, of a young Irish boy they were all at the funeral of. The coroner's inquest returned a verdict that the 8 who had lost their lives, and this is interestingly worded, and this is direct from the report apparently, casually, accidentally, and by misfortune. The brewery obviously nearly bankrupted from what happened. Somehow, the only reason Moe and Company's Horseshoe Brewery survived was because it got a rebate from His Majesty's Excise on the lost beer. However, it led to a lot of changes, as some disasters do. Breweries stopped using the wooden vats and started moving more towards metal. That particular brewery moved from the location where it happened. You've seen the pictures running through here in 1921. Now, I don't know if this is still the case, but at least at the time I was reading this, the Dominion Theater now sits where the brewery used to be. And Moe and Company essentially went bankrupt, went into liquidation, no pun intended, in 1961. So this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. Like, because you know it has to happen. And I know, guarantee you, number 3, not this next one, but the one after that, is one that a lot of people have probably heard of because it is just, it's an absolutely incredible thing. So, but let's take a sip of beer that will be hopefully maintained in the glass, because if the glass breaks, I'm going to be out my comically oversized snifter, and that's just not going to be fun. God, that is so good. That is really, really good. 11 years old. That's just really, really good. All right, we're going to move up in time about 60 years, but we're going to stick in the same part of the world. This time from London, we're going up to Dublin. This is the Dublin Whiskey Fire of 1875. On the 18th of June, 1875, a fire breaks out at a whiskey storehouse in the Liberties area of Dublin. That's not good, because a lot of this stuff, especially if it's in the distiller, is sitting at cask strength, which is much higher than they bottle it at. I know they'll bottle it at, around 40 to 50% alcohol, but cask strength can be upwards of 80% alcohol. So you're looking very, very high octane and very, very flammable liquid. The escaped whiskey formed a burning river about 6 inches deep. That is a frightening prospect. If you're standing in the street and you just see liquid flames a half a foot deep coming at you. Said to have flowed as far as the Coombe, destroyed 35 houses and killed several pigs. Luckily, unfortunately for the pigs, but as weirdly and luckily, there were no human fatalities as a direct result of the fire or the flood. However, there were 13 casualties that were chalked up to it of people who died from alcohol poisoning trying to drink from the stream of whiskey, like I said, at undiluted cask strength, and depending on the brewery, or the distillery, I should say, like I said, that could be upwards of 80 to 85% alcohol. And yeah, and unfortunately that happened. Total property damage, and again, this is back in 1875, was estimated to be over 100,000 pounds, of which the lost whiskey constituted over half, about 54,000 pounds. They're not 100% sure, but essentially it's believed to have started in Lawrence Malone's bonded storehouse on the corner of R.D. Street, and here's a big number for you. 1.193 million liters, or 315,000 gallons of whiskey, were being stored. And by the way, that 54,000 pounds that the whiskey was worth, that's the equivalent to 6.58 million pounds today. The exact cause of the fire, unknown, but it is known to have started between, and here's some detail for you, known to have started between 4:35 p.m. when the storehouse was checked and 8:30 p.m. when somebody noticed it and raised the alarm. At 9:30 p.m., the barrels within the storehouse began to explode with heat, sending a stream of whiskey flowing through the doors and the windows of the burning building. And that's the illustration there. And it begs the question, like, a flood of beer is one thing, but what do you do with a flood of whiskey that's on fire? And I remember years ago when we went to Kentucky to tour the Bourbon Trail, it was not long after I think it was at the Jack Daniel's distillery, there was the fire tornado in this little lagoon. Like, whiskey had spilled out there and something caught it on fire, and there was an actual fire tornado. That's happened at distilleries before, but when you have stuff that's not meant to do that, start to do that, that's when we have problems. That would be terrifying. Like, I mean, a flood in general, obviously, is terrifying because you have this wall of liquid headed at you, but what if said liquid was on fire? That's just really frightening. Beer will fix that. Ironic. But this next one, though, not beer, although alcohol-related technically. You'll see why in a moment. And this is the one I said a lot of you guys would probably know. We're going to fast forward to the 1900s, and we're going to jump the pond. We're coming to America this time. This is the Great Molasses Flood of 1919. Like I say, you probably have heard of this one. The next two I'd never heard of, but I had heard of the London Beer Flood and the Great Molasses Flood. But anyway, this occurred on Wednesday, the 15th of January, the year 1919, in the North End neighborhood of Boston. It occurred at the Purity Distilling Company at 529 Commercial Street near Kenny Square. Now, why did I say it was alcohol-related and we're talking molasses? I'll give you a second. Yeah, what is the ingredient that they ferment to make rum? Molasses, which is basically, sugar cane. So they had a lot of molasses because it was a distillery. How much molasses, you ask? Wait 1 second. A large storage tank filled with 2.3 million gallons of molasses, weighing approximately 13,000 tons, burst, and the resultant wave of molasses rushed through the streets at an estimated 35 miles an hour, or 56 kph for anybody over in Europe. Took 21 lives and injured an additional 150 people. Obviously, it became infamous in local folklore, and residents reported for decades after that the area still smelled of molasses on hot summer days. And I would think that would be true because if you've ever dealt with molasses, like, it is much thicker than even like high-grade maple syrup is. Because the maple syrup, especially most Americans are used to, is that real watery, sugary stuff. But no, this is like deep, dark, thick, extra sugary. Like, so if it gets on something, it's not coming out of something easy. And, what's the old phrase? It's like as slow as molasses in January. Well, this was molasses in January in Boston, and it hit 35 miles an hour. So I think we may have to go out on a limb and say that, molasses isn't exactly slow. Again, like, can you imagine the pressure involved in this one? You have 2.3 million gallons, and it's pressed up against the wall, the lining of this container. That 2.3 million gallons, 13,000 tons worth, by the way, it doesn't want to stay in there. It's pressing up against it. So, much like any other implosion or explosion, involving pressure, all it takes is a microscopic opening and it can lead to, 2.5 million gallons of molasses running down the streets of Boston. Nature and science can be scary. This one, number 4 out of 5, I've never actually heard of, but it's interesting. This is the Rockwood and Company Shipping Department fire. But it is edible, and there is a flood, so bear with me. On May the 12th, 1919, a fire broke out at the shipping department of Rockwood and Company Chocolate Factory at the complex on Flushing Avenue in Brooklyn. So we're away from Boston now. We're down into New York City area. Around 1 a.m., materials and products stored on the second floor, and again, this is for a chocolate making factory, so the materials and products are going to be chocolate making related. But this is from the inquest, are suspected to have caught fire by spontaneous combustion. I don't know, but it is what it is. The New York Fire Department were unable to save the building, but did prevent the spread of the fire to the rest of the plant. Now, here's where it comes from. All that water that they dumped in there for the fire, all that water washed a mixture of molten chocolate and butter out onto the neighboring streets, where it blocked up storm drains and, as the reports put it, caused a flood sufficient to, quote, float a rowboat for 2 blocks, end quote. Obviously, the local children then crowded around to taste the mixture of massive amounts of firefighting water mixed with whatever that was, but coupled with molten chocolate and butter that were in the shipping department when it caught fire and then subsequently leaked out into the streets. So mind you, this is at 1 a.m. this happened. The fire was extinguished by 11 a.m. and caused damage in excess of $75,000, or in today's money, around $1.36 million. Now imagine, even though it's 1919, let's just imagine. You're a firefighter and you get a call like that. And you show up and you're confronted with a river of molten hot chocolate mixed with butter. All the while there's a fire in a shipping building right behind it. It's mind-boggling. But it's one of those things, like, of course, there's always a chance it's going to happen because we're doing stuff that we're, really not supposed to be doing on the whole as a species. So whenever, we let our guard down or something just, randomly happens, yeah, stuff like this is going to happen. And it's going to be bad, but this is not going to be. This is really good. Sip again, and then we're going to finish it off with the last one. This one's very interesting. Like I said, I was alive for when this one happened. I've never heard of it up until I researched this, so bear with me. Man, that is just really good. All right. The year is 1991. Go figure this one. This is the Wisconsin butter fire. If anybody's ever heard of it, please, somebody down in the comments, let me know. Like, hey, I've heard of that. You probably did if you're from around that area, but not being from that area, I'd never heard of this. So essentially, here, and this is an edible one because it was a mix of water and various pork products, a fire and flood of processed meat and dairy that began at a large storage facility in Madison, Wisconsin, known as the biggest commercial fire in Wisconsin state history, and the Madison Fire Department's biggest and most expensive challenge. I would imagine so. Because on May the 3rd, 1991, flames broke out in the late afternoon at the Central Storage and Warehouse Company on Cottage Grove Road, a 500,000 square foot complex that stored, and here's where we're going to start getting some big time numbers, approximately 10 to 15 million pounds of government surplus butter. 15 million pounds of butter. That's just the start. The building also stored ocean spray cranberries that were involved in this, and I do love me some cranberries. And according to an employee, quote, millions and millions of hot dogs, end quote. And that actually translates because Oscar Mayer had in storage there 4 million pounds of sausages at that same facility. So let's just take a moment and process what I just said. You have 10 to 15 million pounds of government butter. You have, it doesn't say how much how much weight of cranberries was being stored, but if Ocean Spray is a big company like the cranberry company, if they're storing things, it's got to be upwards of probably close to 1 million pounds. And then 4 million pounds of hot dog sausages. What a flood. So, the owner of the building was a gentleman by the name of Ken Williams. He stated the fire grew so quickly that, quote, the sprinkler systems were not even able to work. And that could be probably the oil that was in the government surplus butter. According to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources report, here we go. The damages included bakery products, hams, and 1,000 pounds of anhydrous ammonia, which I believe is one of the things they use for curing. I could be wrong, but I don't know. But either way, there was ammonia, 1,000 pounds of ammonia, which is in there. Maybe for the nitrates? I'm not 100% sure. It took about 20 hours to contain the blaze and 8 days until it was fully extinguished. Like, that's terrifying. And that's why, obviously the Madison Fire Department said it was their biggest challenge. Now, here's the firefighter report, and this is also going to make what I'm about to say next extra incredible. A firefighter reported flames about 300 feet high. 25 employees present at the factory. No fatalities at all in this massive 8-day-long conflagration. All 25 employees of the factory were safely evacuated. No one lost their life in an 8-day processed meat fire with flames 300 feet high. However, now we enter the logistical part of it. And, talking about the Great Molasses Flood and just how sticky it would be afterward. Due to the thick, fatty pools of dairy, ladder trucks could not get into the area, nor, if they actually managed to get into the area, nor could they leave, and nor could the fuel trucks enter to refill the ladder trucks' gas tanks. So instead, they had to walk. They sent engineers through a river of butter and other miscellaneous fat that was congealing, and thus, basically, it's like ice trying to get any sort of vehicle through there. They had to go through it on foot, carrying 5-gallon buckets of diesel fuel to maintain the ladder truck's gas tanks. Spraying water on the building eventually caused more gooey melted cheese and butter to flow out. Nearly 3,000 nearby Madison residents had to be evacuated on Friday night and moved to a high school because firefighters thought the flames might spread. Luckily, the flames didn't spread. It was contained and ultimately was extinguished after 8 days. And here's the shocker upon shockers that came from probably the headline in the newspaper. Neighbors complained of a horrific stench. I cannot imagine why. I really can't. The fact that it's a fire containing butter, cheese, and sausage, I cannot imagine why that would stink so bad. But again, all this happening, 300-foot tall flames in a factory that had employees in there and no casualties at all. To me, that's the most impressive thing of the whole thing. And I thought this would be an interesting little change of pace because we talked about, Centralia and the mine fire. And I was looking down my list of weird historical things and I came across the London beer flood. And I was like, oh, okay, I've heard of that one. So I looked into it and then I get down a little later. It said, see list of non-water related floods. I was like, non-water related floods. And like I said, it was a pretty decent list, but I chose the 5 that were essentially edible. Although in the Dublin whiskey fire, as was evidenced by the 13 people that lost their lives to alcohol poisoning, don't drink undiluted cask strength whiskey out of the streets, or out of a bottle, or out of a glass. We've all had alcohol that high in percentage, and it's never ended well for any of us. But that said, like I said, I thought it was just something really interesting, and this is the random things, because this is the guy at the end of the bar that was watching something on YouTube and came out as like, hey, you know what? I bet you all these poor people who are in proximity to me would like to hear that. Hi, guys. How you doing, by the way? But that's going to do it. We're going to wind down the weekend, and yeah. Hopefully I don't know. I'm not going to say hopefully it warms up, because it won't warm up until probably May, April, if we're lucky. But hopefully the snow stays at bay. It's kind of snowing, but not really. 2-3 inches tops, at least at the time I'm recording this. But who knows, by the time this actually airs, I could be, snow could be up to my second floor windows, which has happened in the area before. But we're going to wind it down, and I'm going to let you guys go, and I'm going to say unto you, cheers, my friends. If you're having one along with me, I raise my snifter to you. And honestly, if you are having one, let me know. Are you drinking it out of a funny glass? Because beer tastes better out of a funny glass. Much like food tastes better off somebody else's plate, beer tastes better out of an interesting glass. Although I have to say, man, that is just... Firestone Walker 15. Kudos. That aged beautifully. And it tastes amazing. And I'm going to slowly drink the rest of it over the night. And on that, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you for stopping by. Always appreciate you. Stuff will be coming back next week. Hopefully you enjoy that. And I'm going to leave you with this parting thought. And this one actually kind of holds true to me, because I've been in this position. What would make things interesting if after every Olympic event, they would have an average person try to do it, just so we could really get a gauge on how big the skill gap is. Have a good night, everybody.